The frozen surface of Siakchan Lake shattered like glass beneath Helen Williams' body as she plunged into the darkness. The cold didn't just touch her skin. It attacked her, 1,000 knives stabbing every inch of her flesh simultaneously. Her lungs seized, her throat locked, and for one terrifying moment, her body forgot how to function entirely. Below the surface, the world turned murky green and silent. Helen's eyes burned from the icy water, but she forced them open, scanning desperately through the clouded depths. Where was she? The elderly woman had been right here. She'd seen her fall through, watched the ice give way beneath those delicate feet in traditional hanbok slippers. There, a flutter of fabric, deep purple silk billowing like a jellyfish, sinking deeper into the lake's cold embrace. Helen kicked downward, her limbs already going numb. Every stroke felt like moving through cement. Her fingers, usually so nimble when typing lesson plans or braiding her hair, now felt thick and useless as sausages. The distance between her and the drowning woman seemed to stretch and contract like something alive, mocking her efforts. Come on, come on, Helen's mind screamed, though no sound could escape her sealed lips. You were a lifeguard. You know how to do this. Move. But Nigeria's warm Atlantic coast had never prepared her for this. The community pools in Lagos where she'd earned her certification hadn't warned her that cold could be a living thing, a predator wrapping around her chest and squeezing. Her fingers finally caught fabric, the woman's hanbok, heavy and waterlogged. Helen's hand closed around it like a vice. Got her. The elderly woman's face floated into view, eyes closed, mouth slack. Bubbles escaped from her lips, each one carrying away precious seconds of life. Her skin had taken on a bluish tint that Helen recognized from her training. Hypoxia. Oxygen deprivation. She had minutes at best, maybe less. Helen wrapped her arm around the woman's chest, just below the armpits like she'd been taught years ago on sun-baked poolside concrete. But the woman was heavier than expected, her soaked hanbok adding pounds of water weight. Or maybe it was Helen's own strength failing as the cold seeped into her muscles like poison. She kicked toward what she hoped was the surface. Her lungs were screaming now, a fire burning in her chest that contrasted sickeningly with the ice coating her skin. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. How long had she been under? 20 seconds? 40? Time had lost all meaning in this frozen hell. Her head broke the surface and Helen gasped, sucking in air so cold it hurt worse than the water. But there was no time to celebrate. The woman in her arms remained limp, dead weight dragging them both down. Help! Helen screamed in English, then fumbled for the Korean she'd been studying for 8 months. Dawajuseo, help me. The crowd of festival goers stood frozen on the shore, their shocked faces illuminated by colorful lanterns. 20, maybe 30 people, and every single one of them was just watching. Watching her struggle. Watching this woman die. Some had their phones out, filming. Please. Helen choked out, treading water with legs that barely responded. Someone. The ice near the shore cracked under her weight as she tried to pull the woman toward it. Her fingers had gone beyond numb into something worse. A distant tingling that meant nerve damage was setting in. She couldn't feel if she was gripping the woman's clothing anymore. Couldn't feel anything except the desperate, animal need to get them both out of this water before they both became corpses. A middle-aged Korean man in a puffy jacket finally moved, dropping to his knees at the ice's edge. Hold on, he shouted in English. Don't let go. As if she could. As if her frozen fingers could unclench even if she wanted them to. More people joined him, forming a human chain. Hands reached out, grabbing Helen's jacket, her arms, the unconscious woman's clothing. They pulled, dragged them both across breaking ice and onto solid ground. Helen collapsed onto the frozen earth, her body convulsing with shivers so violent her teeth clacked together hard enough to chip. But she couldn't rest. The woman beside her wasn't breathing. Move, Helen commanded, pushing herself onto her knees though her legs screamed in protest. Her fingers fumbled at the woman's neck, searching for a pulse. There, faint, irregular, but there. CPR. She needed to start CPR. Helen tilted the woman's head back, pinched her nose, and breathed into her mouth. The woman's lips were ice cold against hers. 1 breath, 2 breaths. Then Helen positioned her hands over the woman's sternum and began compressions. Hannah, dull, set, net. Helen counted in Korean, keeping rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. Her arms shook with exhaustion and cold, but she kept going. 15 compressions, 2 breaths. 15 compressions, 2 breaths. Water suddenly gushed from the woman's mouth. Helen quickly turned her onto her side as she vomited lake water onto the ground. The woman gasped, coughed, and then, miracle of miracles, her eyes fluttered open. The crowd erupted in exclamations of relief. Someone was calling 119, Korea's emergency number. Someone else was draping a coat over Helen's shoulders, but she barely noticed. Her vision was tunneling, the edges going dark and fuzzy. The last thing Helen saw before consciousness slipped away was the elderly woman's eyes, alert now, focused, staring at Helen with an intensity that seemed to burn through the cold. The woman's lips moved, forming words in Korean that Helen's fading mind couldn't process. Then darkness swallowed her whole. Have you ever saved someone's life only to realize it changed yours forever? Drop a comment below and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This story is about to get intense. What Helen doesn't know yet is that the woman she just saved isn't just anyone's mother. Like this video if you want to see what happens when a good deed pulls you into a world you never knew existed. Helen woke to the harsh fluorescent lights of a hospital room, her body wrapped in warming blankets that did nothing to stop the shivering that seemed to have taken up permanent residence in her bones. And 4 drip fed warm fluids into her arm, and monitoring equipment beeped steadily nearby. You're awake. Thank God. Helen turned her head. Even that small movement took effort. To see her friend Gina, sitting in a plastic chair beside the bed. Gina's usually perfect makeup was smudged, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. How long? Helen's voice came out as a croak. 6 hours. You've been unconscious for 6 hours. Gina leaned forward, gripping Helen's hand. Helen, what were you thinking? You could have died. The woman. Helen tried to sit up, but her body refused to cooperate. Is she? She's fine. She's alive because of you. But Helen, her family has been trying to find out who you are. They've had people asking everyone at the festival. The hospital staff wouldn't give them information without your consent. Helen closed her eyes, relief washing over her more warming than any blanket. Good. She's okay. That's all that matters. Is it? Gina's voice carried a strange edge. Helen, do you know who that woman is? An elderly Korean woman who almost drowned. What else do I need to know? Gina stood up, pacing the small hospital room. Her heels clicked against the linoleum floor with agitated rhythm. I don't know yet. But those men asking about you, they weren't normal people. Expensive suits. The kind of presence that makes hospital administrators nervous. Security followed them around the whole time they were here. Helen's stomach twisted, though whether from cold or growing unease, she couldn't tell. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe this isn't over. Maybe you should have let me tell them you don't want to be contacted. Gina, I saved someone's life. If her family wants to say thank you, that's normal. Nothing about this feels normal. Gina stopped pacing and looked at Helen directly. Promise me you'll be careful. Something about this whole situation makes me nervous. A nurse entered then, cutting off their conversation with cheerful efficiency. She checked Helen's vitals, pronounced her recovering well from hypothermia, and said she could be discharged in a few hours if her temperature remained stable. When the nurse left, Gina gathered her purse. I have to get to work. My boss is already angry I left in the middle of the day. But call me the moment anything weird happens, okay? Helen nodded, though Gina's paranoia seemed excessive. She'd saved someone's life. That was supposed to be a good thing, wasn't it? The uncomplicated kind of good that people praised and moved on from. The television mounted in the corner of her room suddenly caught her attention. The evening news was showing footage from the festival, the headline reading, Mystery Foreign Woman Saves Drowning Grandmother at Siakchan Lake. Helen watched herself on screen, or rather, watched her back as she dove into the water. The angle didn't capture her face, just her dark skin against the white ice, her body disappearing into the lake. The news anchor spoke in rapid Korean, too fast for Helen to fully follow, but she caught words like brave, foreigner, and unknown hero. They're calling you a hero, Gina said from the doorway, following Helen's gaze to the screen. Everyone's trying to figure out who you are. I don't want to be a hero. I just want to go back to my normal life. Gina's expression suggested she didn't think that would be possible, but she said nothing. She just waved goodbye and left Helen alone with her thoughts and the drip 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 of her four. Helen's normal life was a cramped Gazawan room barely larger than a closet in the Sinchon neighborhood. It cost her 400,000 won per month, nearly a third of her English teaching salary, for a space that fit a single bed, a tiny desk, and nothing else. The shared bathroom was down the hall, and the walls were so thin she could hear her neighbors breathing at night. But it was hers. Her small piece of soul that she'd fought tooth and nail to get after months of apartment rejections. No foreigners, they'd say, or sometimes just hang up when they heard her accented Korean. The Gazawan owner had only rented to her because Gina had vouched for her, promising Helen wouldn't cause trouble. Helen had been in Seoul for 8 months now, teaching English at a hagwon in Gangnam. It wasn't the glamorous Korean adventure she'd imagined back in Lagos. There were no K-drama moments of meeting charming men or forming instant friendships. Instead, there were daily reminders that she didn't belong. The taxi drivers who suddenly had their off-duty lights turn on when they saw her skin color. The ajumas in her neighborhood who clutched their purses tighter when she walked by. The students' parents who'd complained to her boss, requesting a real native English teacher, as if her Nigerian accent somehow made her English less valid than an American's. Gina had been her only real friend, The one person who treated her like a human being rather than a curiosity or a threat. They'd met at a language exchange meetup, and Gina had taken Helen under her wing, teaching her which neighborhoods to avoid, which Korean phrases would actually be useful, how to navigate a culture that smiled politely while keeping her at arm's length. The 3 days following her hospital discharge felt almost normal. Helen returned to work, where some of her students had seen the news coverage and asked if the hero foreigner might be her. Helen had laughed it off, changed the subject, moved on. But on the 4th day, everything changed. Helen was leaving her hagwon, exhausted from a day of teaching elementary students the difference between fun and funny, when a black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. Not just any Mercedes, the kind with tinted windows so dark they seemed to absorb light, the kind that probably cost more than Helen would earn in 5 years. 2 men stepped out, and Helen's first instinct was to run. They wore suits that fit too perfectly, the kind of tailoring that spoke of money and power. Both were Korean, probably in their 30s, with the kind of physical presence that suggested they spent more time in gyms than offices. They moved with coordinated precision, like soldiers or bodyguards. The taller one spoke first, in perfect English. "Miss Williams." Helen's hand tightened on her bag. "Who's asking?" "Our employer wishes to thank you personally for saving his mother's life." The words hung in the air between them. Helen's mind raced. This was it. The family wanting to say thank you, just like she'd thought. So why did every instinct in her body scream danger? "That's very kind, but it's not necessary. I'm just glad she's okay. Please." The second man gestured toward the open car door. "It will only take a moment of your time." "Helen." Gina's voice cut through the tension. She was running toward them from the subway station across the street, her heels clicking frantically against the pavement. She grabbed Helen's arm, pulling her back a step. "Don't," Gina said in English, then switched to Korean, addressing the men. "She's tired. She's been sick. This isn't a good time." The taller man's expression didn't change. "We understand. But our employer was quite insistent. He wishes only to express his gratitude properly." Gina pulled Helen aside, lowering her voice. "Those cars. Those suits. Helen, I've lived in Seoul my whole life. I know what this looks like. Don't get in that car. They just want to say thank you. Nobody sends men like that just to say thank you." Gina's eyes were wide with fear. "Please, tell them no." Helen looked at the men, at their expensive suits and careful politeness, at the Mercedes idling at the curb with its engine purring like a satisfied cat. She thought about the elderly woman's face as she'd coughed up lake water, those eyes that had stared at Helen with such intensity. "Miss Williams," the taller man said, his voice carrying a note of something that wasn't quite patience, wasn't quite threat. "Our employer is not accustomed to having his invitations declined. He means you no harm. You saved his mother's life. He wishes only to thank you in person and ensure you receive proper compensation for your heroism and medical expenses." Compensation. The word made Helen's decision easier. Her credit card was nearly maxed from the hospital bills her cheap Hagwon health insurance hadn't covered. The 4 fluids, the warming treatments, the overnight observation, all of it had added up to more than she could afford. "I'll go," Helen said, pulling her arm free from Gina's grip. "But I want to be back within 2 hours." "Of course," the man said smoothly. "You have our word." "Helen, no. I'll text you every 30 minutes, Helen said to Gina. "If you don't hear from me, call the police." Gina looked like she wanted to argue more, but something in Helen's expression stopped her. Instead, she pulled out her phone. "I'm taking a picture of that license plate, and their faces, and I'm tracking your location." The men didn't object. They simply held the car door open, waiting with the infinite patience of people who knew they would eventually get what they wanted. Helen climbed into the Mercedes, her heart hammering against her ribs. The interior smelled of leather and something else, expensive cologne, maybe, or just the scent of money. The seats were heated, a luxury she'd never experienced before. The door closed with a solid thunk that sounded far too much like a cage locking. Through the tinted window, Helen watched Gina, standing on the sidewalk, phone pressed to her ear, already making calls. Then the car pulled away, gliding through Seoul traffic with a smoothness that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The drive took them through neighborhoods Helen recognized, Gangnam, with its luxury boutiques and plastic surgery clinics, then into areas she'd never seen before. The buildings grew larger, more spread out. Traditional Hanok architecture appeared, but these weren't the tourist-friendly renovated homes of Bukshan Village. These were private estates, hidden behind high walls and older than the modern city surrounding them. They turned onto a private road, stopped at a gate where security guards checked something on a tablet before waving them through. The Mercedes climbed a slight hill, bare trees lining the drive like skeletal sentries. Helen's phone buzzed. "Gina, where are you?" Helen typed back the street name she'd glimpsed before they entered the private road, but she wasn't sure the message would send. The car windows might be blocking signal, or maybe they were just too far from the main road now. The Mercedes stopped in front of a compound that seemed to exist outside of time. Traditional Korean Hanok buildings, their curved roofs elegant against the winter sky, surrounded a central courtyard. But security cameras were discreetly mounted on every corner, and the men standing near the entrance wore the same expensive suits as her escorts. Traditional architecture housing very modern protection. This way, please. Helen stepped out of the car, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. One of the men gestured toward the main building, and she followed on legs that felt less steady than they should. The interior was warm, heated floors radiating gentle heat through her shoes. The decor blended traditional Korean aesthetics with obvious wealth. Antique furniture that belonged in museums, artwork that Helen's untrained eye could still recognize as valuable, everything perfect and pristine and intimidating. They led her to a sitting room where the elderly woman from the lake sat on a cushioned mat, dressed in a beautiful hanbok of deep purple silk embroidered with gold thread. Her hair was styled elegantly, her makeup subtle, and she looked nothing like the drowning victim Helen had pulled from frozen water. The woman's face transformed when she saw Helen. She rose, more sprightly than her apparent age suggested, and crossed the room quickly, taking Helen's hands in her own. Gamsahamnida, Gamsahamnida, the woman said, tears flowing freely down her face. Thank you, thank you. Her hands squeezed Helen's tightly, and her rapid Korean was far too fast for Helen to follow, words tumbling over each other in what sounded like prayers and blessings. I don't understand, Helen said apologetically. My Korean isn't. She says you are her savior, a new voice said in perfect English. Her second daughter, the one who gave her back her life. Helen turned to see a woman in a business suit, translator, she assumed, entering from a side door. But her attention was immediately drawn to the man who entered behind her. He was probably in his mid-40s, though his face had the kind of ageless quality that could have placed him anywhere from 35 to 50. Tall for a Korean man, maybe 5'11", with broad shoulders that filled out his tailored suit perfectly. His hair was styled back from his face, showing strong features, high cheekbones, a sharp jaw, eyes that were simultaneously beautiful and terrifying in their intensity. Those eyes swept over Helen, assessing her in a way that made her feel simultaneously visible and vulnerable. She'd been invisible for so long in Seoul, ignored and overlooked, that this kind of focused attention felt almost violent. Miss Williams, he said, his English carrying the faint trace of a British accent. I am Kang Min-jun. You saved my mother's life. He didn't offer to shake her hand. He simply moved to sit in a chair positioned across from where his mother had been sitting, gesturing for Helen to take a seat on the cushion beside his mother. Helen sat, very aware of the security guard's position near the exits, of the translator standing at attention, of Min-jun's eyes never leaving her face. Anyone would have done the same, Helen said, the words automatic. But they didn't. Min-jun's voice was quiet, but it filled the room anyway. 23 people stood on that shore and watched my mother drown. 23 people with cameras who were more interested in capturing content than saving a life. You dove into water that could have killed you. Watch, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You won't believe what happens when Helen discovers who she's really dealing with. Drop a comment. Would you have jumped into that frozen lake? Helen considered the question. Why had she jumped? I was a lifeguard back in Nigeria. I saw someone drowning. It was instinct. Instinct, Min-jun repeated, as if testing the word. Most people's instincts would have told them to stay on shore where it was safe. To let someone else handle it. To wait for authorities. Then maybe I have different instincts than most people. Something that might have been a smile flickered across Min-jun's face. There and gone so quickly Helen couldn't be sure she'd seen it at all. Yes, I believe you do. His mother spoke again, and the translator converted her rapid Korean into English. She wants you to know that she was visiting the lake because it was where she met her husband 50 years ago. He died 2 years past. She goes there on the anniversary of their first meeting to feel close to him. She says she was ready to join him when the ice broke. But you brought her back. The weight of those words settled over Helen like a blanket. This woman had been ready to die, and Helen had forced her back into a world where her husband no longer existed. Was that really a gift? I'm sorry for your loss, Helen said directly to the woman, knowing the translator would convert her words. I'm glad I could help. The mother reached out and touched Helen's face gently, her fingers warm despite the cold outside. She spoke again, her voice thick with emotion. She says you are a blessing, the translator said. She says the spirits sent you to her, that you are meant to be part of our family now. Family. The word made Helen's stomach clench. She'd come to Korea partly to escape her own family's expectations, the pressure to marry a nice Nigerian man, to work a respectable job, to stop chasing dreams of adventure. And now this stranger wanted to claim her as family? That's very kind, Helen said carefully, but I really just did what anyone should do. I don't expect anything in return. But you shall receive something in return, Min-jun said. His eyes hadn't left her face, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. In Korean culture, when someone saves a life, a debt is created. We call it unhai. It cannot be repaid with money alone. It requires a deeper obligation. I really don't need. What you need is irrelevant. Minjun's voice remained calm, but something in his tone suggested contradiction would be unwise. What matters is what honor demands. My mother is the most important person in my world. The debt I owe you is therefore the greatest debt I can owe. Helen shifted uncomfortably on the cushion. Mr. Kong, I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm just an English teacher. I saved your mother because it was the right thing to do. That's all. Is it? Minjun leaned forward slightly. You've been in Seoul for 8 months, Miss Williams. How has that experience been for you? The question caught her off guard. I'm sorry. I know that you faced discrimination. That finding housing was difficult. That taxi drivers refused to stop for you. That you've been made to feel invisible and unwelcome in this city. He paused. How do I know this? Because I make it my business to know things. Because from the moment you pulled my mother from that lake, you became my concern. A chill ran down Helen's spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. You've been investigating me? Of course. I needed to know who you were. What you wanted. Whether your heroism had ulterior motives. Ulterior motives? I saved a drowning woman. Yes. And in doing so, you created an obligation that some might seek to exploit. Minjun's gaze remained steady. But my investigation revealed that you are exactly what you appear to be. A young woman far from home, working hard, treated poorly, asking for nothing. Which makes my obligation even greater. Helen's hands clenched in her lap. What exactly are you saying? Minjun was quiet for a long moment, seeming to choose his words carefully. I am not a good man, Miss Williams. I should be clear about that from the beginning. I control significant business interests in Seoul. Some legitimate, many not. I operate in spaces that the law prefers to ignore, and I have made choices that would horrify someone with your clear sense of morality. Helen's heart hammered against her ribs. You're telling me you're a criminal? I'm telling you I'm a man who keeps his promises. I'm telling you that the debt I owe you is sacred. And I'm telling you that from this moment forward, you are under my protection. Anyone who disrespects you disrespects me. Anyone who harms you harms me. You will never be invisible in this city again. I don't want protection from a criminal. Helen stood up, her voice shaking. I just want to go home. Minjun remained seated, unruffled by her reaction. Where is home, Miss Williams? Nigeria, where you left to escape expectations you couldn't meet? Korea, where you've spent 8 months being treated as less than human? Or somewhere else entirely that you're still searching for? The accuracy of his words stung like a slap. Helen wanted to argue, to deny, but he'd somehow seen through her more clearly in one investigation than her own family had in 26 years. You have no right. I have every right. You saved my mother. That gives me the right and the obligation to ensure you are cared for. To refuse would dishonor the life you saved. His mother spoke again, her voice gentle but firm. The translator's words cut through Helen's rising panic. She says to refuse this protection would be to reject her. To say that her life wasn't worth saving. She says you are family now, whether you accept it or not. The question is only whether you will make this difficult or allow it to be a blessing. Helen looked at the elderly woman's face, seeing genuine emotion there, real affection from someone who barely knew her. She thought about Minjun's words about unhai, about debts that couldn't be repaid with money alone. What does this protection actually mean? Helen asked quietly. Minjun stood, moving to a side table where he picked up a simple business card, black cardstock with a phone number embossed in silver, nothing else. He held it out to her. It means you carry this. It means my people watch over you. It means the discrimination you've faced ends today. But it also means you will be watched. You will be known. And there are people in this city who will notice, who will wonder why Kong Minjun has taken such interest in a foreign English teacher. What if I just want my normal life back? That life ended the moment you hit the water. His eyes held hers, and she saw something in them that might have been sympathy, might have been regret. The question is whether you will accept this new life with grace, or whether you will fight what cannot be changed. What would you do in Helen's situation? Would you accept protection from someone like Minjun? Drop your thoughts below and smash that like button if you're hooked. Helen took the card with trembling fingers. The numbers seemed to burn against her skin, a brand she hadn't asked for. How long does this last? Helen asked, her voice barely above a whisper. When is the debt paid? When I decide it is, Minjun said simply. Or when you leave Korea. Those are your only options. The translator spoke, but Helen had stopped listening. She was staring at the card in her hand, at the numbers that now connected her to a world she'd never wanted to touch. She thought about the frozen lake, about the split-second decision to jump, about how doing the right thing had somehow become the most complicated choice of her life. Minjun's mother stood, crossing to Helen and pulling her into a tight embrace. The woman's arms were stronger than they looked, and she held Helen like she might a daughter who'd been away too long. She whispered something in Korean against Helen's hair, soft and warm and impossible to understand. She's blessing you, the translator said, asking the ancestors to protect you as you protected her. When the woman finally released her, there were tears in her eyes again. She touched Helen's cheek one more time, then spoke a few words. She says you should go rest now. That we'll see you again soon. That you're always welcome here. One of the suited men appeared at the door, ready to drive Helen back to her regular life. Except it wasn't her regular life anymore, was it? It would never be regular again. The drive back felt longer than the drive there, though Helen knew that wasn't possible. She stared at the card in her hand, at the simple string of numbers that represented something she didn't fully understand. Protection, obligation, debt. Gina was pacing outside Helen's Gazawan when the Mercedes pulled up, her phone pressed to her ear. She nearly dropped it when she saw Helen emerge from the car. You're alive, Gina said, rushing to her. I've been calling you for an hour. Why didn't you answer? My phone died, Helen lied. The truth was she'd been too overwhelmed to check it. I'm fine. They just wanted to say thank you. For over 2 hours? Gina's eyes went to the Mercedes as it pulled away. Helen, what happened in there? They climbed the narrow stairs to Helen's tiny room. Once inside, with the door closed, Helen showed Gina the card. Gina's face went pale. He gave you a direct line? You know who he is. Everyone knows who Kang Min-jun is. Or at least, everyone knows the rumors. Gina sat on Helen's bed, the only furniture besides the desk. He controls most of the entertainment district in Gangnam. Clubs, bars, some say brothels, though nothing's ever been proven. He's been investigated for everything from loan sharking to human trafficking, but witnesses never testify. Cases disappear. He's untouchable. His mother said I'm family now. Oh God. Gina put her head in her hands. Helen, do you understand what this means? If Kang Min-jun has claimed you as family, if he's given you his protection, you're not just some English teacher anymore. You're connected to one of the most dangerous men in Seoul. I didn't ask for this. I know. But that doesn't matter. In Korean culture, the debt of a saved life is sacred. He probably feels genuinely obligated to protect you. Which means, Gina trailed off, her expression troubled. Which means what? Which means you're probably safer than you've ever been in this city. But you're also more dangerous. To yourself and to anyone around you. Helen thought about throwing the card away, about pretending this had never happened. But something told her it wouldn't matter. The debt had been created the moment her body broke through that ice. Whether she acknowledged it or not, Kang Min-jun now considered himself responsible for her. What do I do? Helen asked. Gina looked at her friend with genuine fear in her eyes. I honestly don't know. The changes started the next morning. Helen stopped at her usual coffee shop on the way to work, a tiny place run by an elderly couple who'd always been coldly polite to her at best, often pretending not to understand her Korean even when it was perfectly clear. But when she walked in, the owner's face transformed. He rushed from behind the counter, bowing deeply. Welcome, welcome. Please sit. I'll bring you our finest coffee. Helen stood frozen in confusion. I just want an Americano to go. No, please sit. Let me serve you properly. The man was already pulling out a chair at the best table, the one by the window that was usually reserved for regular customers. His wife emerged from the kitchen, carrying a tray with not just coffee, but pastries that Helen had never seen them serve before, the expensive kind from hotel bakeries. Please, enjoy, the woman said in careful English, bowing. It is our honor to serve you. I can pay. The man waved his hands frantically. No money. You are our valued guest. Helen tried to argue, but they absolutely refused payment. She left the coffee shop in a daze, clutching her free Americano and a bag of pastries she hadn't asked for, feeling more confused than grateful. At the subway station, she noticed a taxi driver actually slowed down when he saw her, his empty light on, clearly looking for a fare. When she reached the Hagwon, the principal was waiting at the entrance. Miss Williams, so wonderful to see you. I was hoping we could have a conversation about your position here. Helen's stomach dropped. Was she being fired? Had someone complained again about her teaching? But the principal led her to his office with an obsequious smile and offered her a promotion, head English teacher, with a raise of 500,000 won per month, nearly double her current salary. Your dedication to your students has been exemplary, the principal said, though he'd never mentioned any such thing before. We want to ensure you feel valued here. 3 students' parents who'd complained about her last month suddenly sent gift baskets to the school, expensive fruit arrangements that probably cost more than Helen's monthly rent. The notes all said variations of the same thing. Thank you for educating our children. We are honored to have you as their teacher. By lunchtime, Helen was thoroughly unsettled. She pulled out the card Min-jun had given her, staring at the numbers. Had he done this? How had word spread so quickly? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Miss Williams, this is Secretary Kim. Mr. Kong wanted me to check that you are settling in well to your new circumstances. How did you get my number? Mr. Kong has access to information he requires. The woman's voice was professionally pleasant. Is everything satisfactory? People are treating me differently. Did he? Mr. Kong made certain inquiries regarding your treatment in Seoul. Word has spread that you are under his protection. It is natural that people would wish to demonstrate their respect. I didn't ask for this, Helen said, her voice tight. Nevertheless, it is done. Mr. Kong also wanted me to inform you that a car will collect you this evening at 7. His mother wishes to have dinner with you. I have lesson planning to do. The car will be there at 7. Good day, Miss Williams. The line went dead before Helen could protest further. Gina found her at lunch, sitting alone in the teacher's lounge with her untouched free pastries. You look like you've seen a ghost. Everyone's being nice to me, Helen said. Actually nice. Not fake nice. And it's terrifying. Word travels fast in Seoul. If Kong Min-jun has claimed you, people will know. They'll treat you well because they're afraid of what happens if they don't. Gina sat down, lowering her voice. Helen, maybe you should think about leaving Korea. Go home to Nigeria, or try another country. Get away from this before it gets worse. His secretary said his mother wants to have dinner with me tonight. Are you going? Helen thought about saying no, about refusing the car, about trying to reclaim her normal life. But she remembered the elderly woman's face, the genuine affection in her eyes. The woman hadn't asked to be saved, but Helen had saved her anyway. Didn't she owe her at least the courtesy of dinner? I think I have to, Helen said quietly. The car arrived at exactly 7 p.m., idling outside Helen's gazawan like a sleek black shark. Helen had changed into her nicest dress, a simple navy blue thing she'd bought for job interviews, and felt hopelessly underdressed the moment she slid into the Mercedes's leather interior. But this time, the drive didn't take her to the Hanok compound. Instead, they went to a restaurant in Cheongdam-dong, the kind of place that didn't have a sign out front because anyone who needed to know about it already did. The kind of place where a single meal probably cost more than Helen's monthly salary. Min-jun's mother was waiting in a private dining room, dressed in another beautiful hanbok. But this time, Min-jun was there too, sitting across from his mother with a glass of what looked like whiskey. He stood when Helen entered, a gesture of respect that somehow made her more nervous rather than less. Miss Williams, my mother was hoping you would join us for a meal. I'm honored, Helen said, bowing slightly. She'd learned that much Korean etiquette at least. The mother gestured for Helen to sit beside her, and immediately began serving her food from the various banchan dishes covering the table. She spoke constantly in Korean, her voice warm and animated, while Min-jun translated. She's telling you about my father, he said, his voice softer than Helen had heard before. How they met at Seokcheon Lake. He was a fisherman's son. She was from a wealthy family. They weren't supposed to be together, but he made her laugh, and she made him ambitious. The mother's eyes shone with tears and joy as she spoke, her hands moving expressively. She pointed to Min-jun, then to herself, then to Helen, her meaning clear even without translation. We are family now, all of us together. Helen found herself relaxing despite her intentions. The food was incredible, and the mother's warmth was genuine. She fed Helen choice pieces of grilled meat, insisted she try everything, fussed over her like she actually was a beloved daughter. Your mother is very kind, Helen said to Min-jun during a lull in the conversation. She sees in you something pure, Min-jun replied. In our world, purity is rare. She wants to protect it. As do I. I'm not pure. I'm just a person who made a choice. The right choice. When everyone else was paralyzed by fear or indifference, you acted. That is not common, Miss Williams. Not in Seoul, not anywhere. His mother spoke again, and Min-jun's expression shifted, something that might have been discomfort crossing his face. She wants to know if you have family in Korea. Friends. People who care for you. I have Gina, and my family back in Nigeria, though we don't talk much. The mother's response was immediate and forceful. Min-jun actually smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. She says that is unacceptable, that you are her daughter now, and she will not allow you to be alone. She wants you to come to dinner every week. She wants to teach you Korean cooking. She wants. He paused, his smile fading. She wants to care for you in all the ways she cannot care for my father anymore. Helen felt tears prick at her eyes. She'd been so lonely in Seoul, so isolated, that this sudden, overwhelming affection felt like water to someone dying of thirst. Dangerous water, maybe, connected to dangerous people, but water nonetheless. I would like that, Helen said, and meant it. The mother clapped her hands in delight and immediately began planning their next meeting, talking about dishes she would teach Helen to make, places she would take her, things they would do together. Min-jun watched this with an expression Helen couldn't quite read. You've made her very happy. She hasn't smiled like this since my father died. She makes me happy too, Helen admitted. I didn't realize how much I missed having a mother figure in my life. Something dark flickered across Min-jun's face. Be careful with that happiness, Miss Williams. My world is not kind to the people I care about. There are those who would seek to hurt me by hurting them. Are you trying to scare me away? I'm trying to be honest with you. The protection I offer is real, but it comes with risks. Not everyone will be pleased that you have my favor. As if summoned by his words, one of Min-jun's men entered the private room, bowing and speaking quickly in Korean. Minjun's expression hardened, turning from the warm sun back into something cold and dangerous. He stood, straightening his suit jacket. I apologize, but I must attend to some business. My driver will ensure you get home safely. Is everything okay? Minjun looked at her for a long moment. Nothing that should concern you. Enjoy your meal with my mother. I will see you soon. He left, and the warmth seemed to leave with him. His mother's expression had shifted too, worry creasing her forehead. She reached out and took Helen's hand, squeezing it tightly while speaking in urgent Korean. Drop a comment if you think Helen should have stayed away from this family. Like this video if you want to see how this protection turns into something darker. Don't forget to subscribe. This story is about to take a dangerous turn. Helen didn't understand the words, but she understood the fear in the woman's eyes. Whatever business Minjun had to attend to, it wasn't the kind that ended well. The drive home was quiet, Helen's mind spinning with contradictions. Minjun's mother was kind, genuinely kind. But her son was admittedly a criminal. The protection he offered was real. Helen had experienced that firsthand today, but what would it cost her in the end? She was still pondering these questions when she entered her Gazawan building and climbed the stairs to her floor. The hallway was dimly lit as always, the fluorescent bulbs flickering in that way that usually annoyed her, but tonight felt ominous. Helen unlocked her door and stepped inside, reaching for the light switch. Before she could flip it, a hand clamped over her mouth and another grabbed her arm, yanking her backward into a hard body. Terror flooded her system. She tried to scream, but the hand over her mouth was too tight. She bit down hard, tasting blood, and her attacker cursed but didn't let go. Shoo, shoo. A voice said in accented English. We just want to talk. The light flicked on, revealing two men in her tiny room. Not Minjun's well-dressed bodyguards. These men were younger, rougher, with the kind of edge that came from violence being a regular part of life. The one holding her forced her to sit on her bed, while his companion locked the door. Helen's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Who are you? She managed to ask, her voice shaking. Messengers, the one who'd grabbed her said. He was Korean, maybe late 20s, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. You've become very interesting very quickly, Miss Williams. Kong Minjun's new pet. I'm not anyone's pet. No. The second man laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. Then why is word spreading all over Gangnam that you're under his protection? Why are people treating you like royalty? Seems like a pet to me. I saved his mother's life. That's all. That's all. The scarred man crouched in front of her, his face inches from hers. You dove into a frozen lake and pulled out the one person Kong Minjun cares about more than his own life. That makes you either very brave or very stupid. We're here to find out which. What do you want? We want you to deliver a message to Kong. Tell him Park Young-woo says his protection means nothing. Tell him his mother should have stayed under the ice. Helen's blood turned cold. You're threatening an old woman? We're threatening everyone Kong cares about, which apparently now includes you. The man stood, looking down at her. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to keep being Kang's little charity case. You're going to have dinner with his mother, take his gifts, enjoy his protection. And you're going to report back to us about everything you see and hear. I won't. The man moved so fast Helen didn't see it coming. His hand cracked across her face, snapping her head to the side. Pain exploded across her cheek, bright and shocking. You will, he said calmly, or we'll make sure you regret it. And maybe we'll pay another visit to that friend of yours. Gina, right? Pretty girl. Would be a shame if something happened to her. Helen's vision blurred with tears of pain and rage. Don't you dare touch her. Then do what we say. We'll be in touch about what information we want. He dropped another card on her bed, this one white, with a different number. You call this number once a week. You tell us what Kong is doing, who he's meeting with, what his plans are. Simple. And if I tell him about this visit, then everyone you care about suffers. Your friend Gina, your students, that sweet old mother who thinks you're her daughter now. We'll make you watch while we hurt them, one by one. Do you understand? Helen understood. She understood that she'd fallen into something far worse than she'd imagined. That the protection Minjun offered had painted a target on her back. That these men, Park Young-woo's men, would use her to hurt him and wouldn't hesitate to destroy innocent people to do it. I understand, she whispered. Good girl. The scarred man patted her injured cheek, making her wince. Remember, one call a week. And not a word to Kong, or you'll be responsible for a lot of suffering. They left as quickly as they'd come, slipping out of her room and disappearing into the hallway. Helen sat on her bed, shaking, her cheek throbbing, her mind racing. She should call Minjun. The card he'd given her was still in her purse. But if she did, these men would know. They were probably watching her building right now. And they would hurt Gina. Would hurt Minjun's mother. Would hurt people who didn't deserve to be caught up in this war between criminals. Helen pulled out her phone with trembling hands and called Gina instead. Can you come over? Please. I need you. Gina heard something in her voice because she didn't ask questions, just said she'd be there in 15 minutes. When Gina arrived and saw Helen's face, the red mark already darkening into a bruise, She gasped. Who did this? Helen told her everything. About the man, about Park Young-woo, about the demand that she spy on Min-jun. Jina listened with growing horror, her face pale. You have to tell Kong Min-jun, Jina said when Helen finished. Right now? These men assaulted you in your own home. They'll kill you if I do. They said so. They know who you are, Jina. They threatened you specifically. I don't care. I care. Helen's voice broke. You're the only real friend I have in this city. I won't put you in danger. So what are you going to do? Spy on a crime boss? Helen, that's insane. If Kong finds out, he'll think you betrayed him. And if these park people think you're not giving them good enough information, they'll hurt you anyway. You're caught between two monsters. Helen put her head in her hands. I know, and I don't know what to do. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on them. Maybe, Gina said slowly. Maybe you tell Kong, but you ask him to protect me too. To protect both of us. And trust that he will. Do you have a better option? Helen didn't. She pulled out Min-jun's card, staring at the numbers that now felt less like a lifeline and more like a chain. But Gina was right. Caught between two dangerous men, she had to choose one. And at least Min-jun had never threatened to hurt innocent people. She dialed the number with shaking fingers. He answered on the second ring. Miss Williams. His voice was calm, but she could hear something underneath it. Concern, maybe, or suspicion. It's late. Is something wrong? They were in my room, Helen said, her voice breaking. Park Young-woo's men. They hit me. They threatened Gina. They want me to spy on you. The silence on the other end was absolute. When Min-jun spoke again, his voice was so cold it made Helen shiver. Where are you now? My Gazawan. Gina is with me. Stay there. Lock your door. Don't open it for anyone except my men. They'll be there in 5 minutes. Min-jun. You should have called me immediately. His voice cut like a knife. The moment they touched you, you should have called. Do you understand how dangerous it was not to? Would you call the crime boss or try to handle it yourself? Comment below and hit that like button if your heart is racing right now. I was trying to protect people. You were trying to protect people from me? I told you that you were under my protection. That means when someone threatens you, they threaten me. When someone hurts you. He stopped, and Helen could hear him breathing, could almost feel his rage through the phone. Just stay where you are. We'll discuss this when I arrive. The line went dead. Gina stared at Helen with wide eyes. He's coming here? His men are. Maybe him too. Helen, what have we gotten ourselves into? They didn't have to wait long. Less than 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the door, 3 sharp raps, authoritative and precise. Miss Williams, it's Secretary Kim. Mr. Kong sent us. Helen opened the door to find 4 of Min-jun's men in the narrow hallway, looking absurdly out of place in their expensive suits against the Gazawan's peeling wallpaper. Secretary Kim, a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and an immaculate pantsuit, stood at the front. You and your friend need to come with us, Kim said. Your belongings will be collected and brought to you. Bring only what you need for tonight. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. Mr. Kong is displeased that his protection was insufficient to prevent this incident. He's taking personal responsibility for your safety now. Within 10 minutes, Helen and Gina were in another Mercedes, their few grabbed belongings and bags at their feet. Gina kept whispering, oh my God, under her breath while Helen stared out the window at Seoul passing by in streaks of light. They were taken to a high-rise building in Gangnam, the kind with a doorman and security and the smell of money in the lobby. The elevator required a key card to access the upper floors. They rose to the penthouse level. The apartment they entered was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Everything pristine and perfect, and utterly unlike the cramped Gazawan Helen had been living in. You'll stay here tonight, Secretary Kim said. Both of you. Mr. Kong will meet with you in the morning. Whose apartment is this? Gina asked, her voice small. It belongs to Mr. Kong. He keeps several properties. This one is secure, with guards at all entrances. No one can reach you here without going through his security. Secretary Kim showed them to separate bedrooms, each larger than Helen's entire Gazawan room, and left them with instructions to rest, eat from the fully stocked kitchen if they were hungry, and wait. When they were alone, Gina turned to Helen. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. We're in a crime boss's penthouse apartment. We're under his protection. Men with guns are probably outside the door right now. I know. Do you? Helen, this isn't an adventure anymore. This isn't some K-drama where everything works out. These are real criminals. Real violence. Real danger. I know. Helen's voice cracked. Don't you think I know that? I didn't ask for any of this. I just jumped into a lake. I just tried to save someone's life. And now I'm caught in some war between criminals, and I don't know how to get out. Gina's expression softened. She crossed the room and pulled Helen into a hug. I'm sorry. I'm just scared. For both of us. Me too. They held each other for a long moment. 2 women far from home, caught in something bigger and darker than either of them had ever imagined. Minjun arrived at dawn. Helen had barely slept, lying awake in the too-soft bed in the too-large room, listening to the city wake up beyond the windows. When she heard voices in the living area, she pulled on the hotel-style robe that had been hanging in the bathroom and went to investigate. Minjun stood by the windows, silhouetted against the rising sun. He'd changed clothes since last night, now wearing dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking somehow more dangerous in casual clothing than he did in his perfect suits. He turned when he heard her, and his eyes went immediately to her face. The bruise had bloomed overnight, dark purple and ugly across her cheek. Something in his expression shifted, a flash of rage so intense that Helen took an involuntary step back. "Come here," he said, his voice quiet. Helen approached slowly. Minjun reached out and gently tilted her face toward the light, examining the bruise with a touch far softer than she'd expected from him. "Park Young-woo will answer for this," he said. "He's crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. I don't want people to die because of me. They won't die because of you. They'll die because they made the choice to threaten what is mine to protect." His hand dropped from her face. "Sit. We need to talk." They sat across from each other on pristine white furniture. Secretary Kim appeared with tea, served them both, and disappeared again like a ghost. "You should have called me immediately," Minjun said. "The moment those men entered your room, the moment they touched you, you should have contacted me. They threatened Gina. They said they'd hurt your mother. I was trying to protect people. Protection is my responsibility, not yours. When I told you that you were under my protection, I meant it absolutely. That means you trust me to handle threats. You don't try to shoulder them alone." Helen's hands clenched around her teacup. "How can I trust you when I barely know you? When you admit you're a criminal? When people like Park Young-woo exist because of the world you operate in?" Minjun was quiet for a long moment. "You're right. The world I inhabit created men like Young-woo. But whether you trust me or not, I'm the only thing standing between you and people who would use you as a pawn in their games. So I need you to answer a question, and I need you to answer it honestly." "What question? Do you want to leave Korea? Return to Nigeria, or go somewhere else entirely? Because I can arrange that. I can ensure your safety anywhere in the world. But if you stay here, you stay under my protection, which means you follow my rules. No more trying to handle threats alone. No more sacrificing yourself to protect others. That's my job now. You become part of my world completely, with all that entails." Helen thought about running. About going back to Nigeria, to her family's expectations and the life she'd fled. About starting over somewhere new, carrying the weight of this experience, but free from its immediate danger. But she also thought about Minjun's mother, about the warmth in her eyes and the way she'd held Helen like she mattered. About finally feeling visible in Seoul, even if it was for complicated reasons. About the fact that running felt like letting the Park Young-woos of the world win. "I want to stay," Helen said quietly. "But I need you to protect Gina too. And your mother. And anyone else who might become a target because of me. Already done. Gina will have bodyguards. My mother's security has been tripled. And you." He paused. "You will move into a secure apartment. You will have guards with you at all times. And you will report any unusual contact, any threats, anything that makes you uncomfortable directly to me." "Agreed." "Agreed." "Good." Minjun stood. "Secretary Kim will help you and Gina get settled. I have business to attend to." "What kind of business?" He looked at her, and she saw the dangerous man beneath the careful courtesy. "The kind that ensures Park Young-woo understands the consequences of touching what belongs to me. Don't ask for details you don't want to know, Miss Williams." He left, and Helen sat alone in the sunrise-filled apartment, wondering if she'd just made a deal with the devil or accepted the protection of a dark angel. Maybe both. Maybe it didn't matter anymore. 3 months later, Helen stood in Minjun's garden, watching his mother teach her how to plant herbs according to lunar cycles. Her Korean had improved dramatically with daily practice, though she still struggled with complex grammar. The world had shifted around her in ways both obvious and subtle. She taught at a prestigious international school now. Minjun had arranged the transfer, claiming he simply made a phone call to the right people. She lived in a beautiful apartment in Gangnam, always with discreet guards watching. She had dinner with Minjun's mother every week, sometimes with Minjun himself when business allowed. She'd never asked what happened to Park Young-woo, but the news had reported a major gang war in Gangnam that lasted 3 weeks and ended with several key figures disappearing. Young-woo's organization had dissolved. The threats had stopped. Helen had learned not to ask questions about Minjun's business, but she'd also learned that he kept his promises. Gina remained safe, with security so subtle she barely noticed it. Minjun's mother thrived, made happy by Helen's presence in her life. And Helen herself, she wasn't sure what she was anymore. Not just an English teacher. Not exactly family, but not quite an outsider either. Something in between, something new. "You've changed," Minjun said, appearing in the garden doorway. He'd started doing this, showing up unexpectedly, watching her with those intense eyes that saw too much. So have you, Helen replied. It was true. He smiled more now, real smiles that reached his eyes. Your mother says I'm good for you. She's not wrong. He crossed the garden to stand beside her. You remind me that there's more to life than power and control. That sometimes the bravest thing is simply to care when caring puts you at risk. Helen looked at him. This dangerous man who'd become something like a friend, or perhaps something more complicated than friendship. Do you regret it? The debt? The obligation? Never. His voice was certain. You gave me back my mother. You gave her joy again after 2 years of grief. That debt can never be repaid, no matter how long I try. His mother called to them in Korean, laughing at something in the soil, and they both turned toward her voice. Helen had come to Korea looking for belonging, for adventure, for escape. She'd found it in the strangest place, in a debt she'd never asked for, with people she should fear, in a life she'd never imagined. She wasn't untouchable because of power or fear. She was untouchable because she'd given without thinking, loved without asking, and dove into freezing water when everyone else just watched. Sometimes the greatest protection came not from being feared, but from being the one person who chose to care. If this story kept you hooked until the very end, smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories. Drop a comment telling us, would you have jumped into that frozen lake? Would you have accepted Minjun's protection? Let us know your thoughts below. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next upload. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes one choice changes everything.